1995 cyber profile or broken trust models, not just for SSL anymore, where we'll be examining the methods of identification used by social media and internet companies and how, by abusing 2 points, they can be used to create untrustable or anonymous profiles. And just keep understanding the quotes because the different methodologies could be tracked by the right government agency or company. First introduction to, from a small-time boutique company to the corporate world, legal disclaimers. At its core, this talk is just talking about the system that is. There are no exploits or vulnerabilities being disclosed. The companies mentioned are not doing anything wrong or insecurely. To give you a background on how I started getting involved in creating anonymous profiles and untraceable accounts is by working with people that have been abused women, people that had orders of protections, people that needed to hide. I worked with different groups and providing suggestions on how they could get these covert or secondary channels of communication with their families during these times. And that's how I first got involved with doing this type of stuff. Yeah, I know it's kind of shocking that you can actually get asked to do something in IT security other than break into a girlfriend's computer and email account when things go south. All right, who am I? Up here, not really that important, but contact details. What I really want to be is a part-time farmer, but there's just no money in it. Okay, with this talk, we can take over the world. Not really, but we will be able to remove a little, excuse me, a little nervous here. All right, we will be able to remove a little arbitrary, oh gosh, I apologize. I'm not used to standing in the room, we're breaking in. But what we're looking to do is remove a little attestation between ourselves and the targets. Mostly when the engagements go south or if an engagement calls for engaging in the blue team or the red team. How can we remove these secondary associations between ourselves and these customers? This is actually a 25-minute version of a 45-minute talk I did. So I had to cut out some of the social media stuff to focus on the more interesting things. All right. So let's just start out with a basic understanding of how things are currently done in the advanced engagements. You have domain fronting, purchase of expired domains, maybe dynamic DNS services, proxying C2 traffic, redirection, fake identities of ONS. All of this stuff is good stuff. Of course, there's things like domain privacy, which is really a short time delay for certain targets. A victim of a cyber attack can contact a domain provider and get that privacy pierced. Sorry. But there's one thing that's missing in all of this. In short, the industry currently focuses on hiding the interactive C2 infrastructure, but not how the services are bought and who owns that infrastructure that we pay for. And this talk looks to address that. So why all the trouble of creating untraceable profiles? Since we all start with different points of knowledge and understanding, I'm just going to cover a few basic things first. As security companies, we currently look to remove attestation from our accounts with ONS and the targets. Normally, we don't need to worry about the secondary associations, our metadata, or having our infrastructure accounts privacy pierced. But what if the target is law enforcement? What if it's a government agency? What if you are a dark web hunter, or you work hunting down criminal organizations? And again, what if your purpose is to protect the abused? And frankly, need for untraceable profiles is because you never know when you're going to show up on the internet. Okay, again, continuing on. Metadata, refer to that. That is just data that provides information about other data. Some of us in the room have used metadata to compromise a target. We look for the usernames, internal host names, operating system, software versions, etc., to further attacks. But how often do you think about in your engagements metadata? Threat hunters have several models to correlate metadata, such as the diamond and the sticks. And as attackers, we need to know about these information models they have about our metadata. And the fact remains, every threat hunter vendor has profiles on major pen test companies. besides the threat actors. Our go-to plays, the phone numbers, the service providers, the CT signatures, the initial vectors are all traceable and trackable metadata. All right. So, and because it's DerbyCon and you need MEs, I had to throw this one in there, because you actually don't own the infrastructure when you buy these services. All right, creating untrustable and trackable identities. So for myself, thinking about the metadata of engagements with certain higher end targets, I was thinking of looking at ways to mimic threat actors that use compromised third-party hosts, to host the malware or non-interactive C2. A lot of our C2 is all interactive, so we don't worry about this, but I was kind of thinking, it'd be nice to stick long-term malware on a client, beacon out 3 months, that type of stuff. I was thinking about how ethical it is to redirect to a similar looking company. What is the potential impact on their brand? And obviously, reputation service providers now search out that stuff. Whew. All right, so this got me thinking, why not use real companies and not untraceable? Got me thinking, why not use a real company, but an untraceable company to avoid the negative associations with a valid company. Instead of domain fronting, an untraceable company would make it possible to use vulnerable software to host non-interactive malware. How would it look if you use multiple domains, all using the same piece of software from valid-looking companies to the right blue team? Or better yet, you're using code base that looks like it is from 2000, again, for the right blue team. Would that be enough to throw them off if an engagement goes south? All right, so again, what is required for a cyber identity? Some of the big services for ONIS and human intelligence, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, business services to add respectability and trust, Office 365, G Suite, Dropbox, etc. Virtual private servers to launch attacks from, host domains, proxy engagements through. But how can all this be gotten anonymously? So, before we start to attack, utilize, or abuse a system for unintended purposes, we need to understand that system. Just basic hacking 101. So, what is the main ways that these cyber businesses use to validate an identity on their platforms? So I've looked at multiple different service providers, and at the core, I've determined that the trust model used is really an email address or a mobile phone. If you can gain one of those two things anonymously, you can actually start abusing internet service providers and gain a rather bizarre circle of trust through SSO to gain other services anonymously. So, my solution to this, and this is where the part you go, oh yeah, of course that's the arrow next to the gas in the car. My easiest solution to create untraceable identities and companies is just really two parts. And no, it's not Bitcoin, because Bitcoin at its core is traceable, trackable. We can talk offline and have that kind of religious debate later. First having an anonymous mobile number, aka burner phone, is required. This is a trivial thing to get. Boost Mobile, TrackPhone, Straight Talk, AT&T are all available from large box stores. They only require activation. That's it. They do not require any sort of identification to gain this. So these service providers give you numbers without verifying contact details. To recharge, you need just the phone number and a PIN on the account, and an active recharge card from the store. Smartphones are brilliant because they give you 2 or 3 usage by changing out the SIM providers. You gain a Google account or Apple account by using the right smartphone. You gain the means of 2FA, either through the text or authenticator app. Word of warning is some providers do expire the recharge cards. So it's just a way of getting the liability off their sheets. So you want to make sure that when you buy these service cards, it's a 30-day service. You use it or you don't use it. That's it. Just careful with what you purchase so you don't waste money. For long-term companies, I prefer using VoIP or SIP providers, or a simple flip phone, just because it's more economical. It's cheaper to have. I did use Google numbers, And they're okay for engagements. The reverse lookup of the number shows Google, but that's fine if you're using G Suite as your business platform, and we're going to go into that. So how do you get the untraceable and untrackable thing? Very simply, our man Johnny, that's right, cash. Since the vendors don't require anything other than the SIMs to provide a phone number, a cash purchase at a random large box store, the SIMs or the SIMs phone combination and a recharge card is all you're going to need to get the phone. Obviously, there's tracking of the cell towers, etc. And as a side note, if you are working with abused people or victims of abuse, having a smart mobile phone done this way is a must for communication for them and keeping the channel covert from the abuser. All right, moving on. So, solution to the untrackable companies. This is the second part, and this is probably the part that you all came to hear about. Okay, it is actually prepaid debit gift cards. Again, we use the cash to go ahead and buy it. Prepaid debit gift cards do not require any form of validation to create them. Several vendors, all that requires is any physical address, a name, and a self-created PIN. There are bad ones that will burn you. Those are the rechargeable ones. The rechargeable debit cards, what you want to look for is if it says verify ID, because of the Intelligence Reform and Terrorism Prevention Act of 2004, those require an SS number, a green card, or a bank account to validate them. Off camera, I can give you recommendations on which cards to actually use and stuff like that. I just don't want to burn the ones I use, but I will give you that information. Before spending any monies, if you look at the back of the card, it will tell you the registration activation site. Just go look at it, and it will be pretty clear if they require any form of identification. Now, what can you do with these prepaid debit cards? Well, just lessons I've learned. When you're setting up the business services and the addresses on these to activate the debit cards, you want to make sure your addresses match. Also, the burner phones, the numbers should match the geographical area code of the address. And burner phone providers do not restrict the geographical area code that you request when you're setting up the phone. I found good business addresses for businesses to use. I look for shared office space buildings or multiple tenant buildings that do not disclose the tenant information. At the start of an engagement, I usually pick up a couple 60 or $100 gift cards. They provide the most flexibility to gain several months of service without having to waste any monies. You'll see, though, any monies left over on these gift cards can actually be placed onto a prepaid provider VPS service or VoIP provider. So it's a great way of recouping that money. Use the name on the gift card. I find some vendors don't question if it says gift card recipient, just type that in as name. Other ones will accept the fake name that you put in when you activated the card. Having a card with the exact money is more likely to get rejected because companies validate cards by placing a penny or dollar transaction. So you want to make sure that you have a few dollars extra on the cards. Cards can expire. When you purchase these gift cards, some vendors charge a monthly fee until the first purchase. Again, this is to get the liability off their balance sheets. Pay for 1 year of service, even if the engagement is not that long. By buying 1 year's worth of service, it avoids some of the rejections you could receive with a subscription, because these prepaid debit cards are not designed for that, and I find sometimes they are getting caught when you're signing up. But, okay, so other addition, again, service providers, you're looking for the ones that are credit balance model providers. These are your VoIPs, ServerPoint, a few other ones. You just have to DuckDuckGo providers that accept prepaid Visa, MasterCard debit cards. What? Did you think I was going to say Google in an anonymous talk? Sorry. I also found out that PayPal will accept a prepaid debit gift card as the account's credit card. This opens up the whole slew of other services that are not cash-based providers. And we'll go into how to get that stuff in a second. All right, 15 minutes, good. Okay, so now that we know the hows and the whats, we're going to look at how to create. So why not just use Tor? Well, social media companies and other companies tend to be untrusting of IP addresses. That's the end Tor point, as we probably all know. But what I do find out works really well is using a hidden Tor service such as OpenVPN on an anonymously purchased VPS host, then using the VPS host for my activities. I have yet to have an account completely closed when malicious activities are detected this way. To the traditional VPN providers, there are others, but these are ones I use. Mulvid, cash is king. When you sign up for just an account number, you don't need any other information when you're paying with cash. You just mail the cash with the account number off, and it's good. Again, a year's worth of service. I like it. It does accept also the prepaid debit cards. Private internet access. Again, they take gift cards and prepaid debit cards. You just need to sign up with an anonymous email. Both of these services can be signed up coming from a Tor endpoint. So again, you want to keep your communication base covered. Let's see, there are others. These are just ones that I know about, that I use, and I know they work. This is just basic 101. But if you're not going to keep your traffic untraceable at the beginning, there's no sense of going to the rest of the trouble. All right, so the companies, what is required? You need a domain name, hosting service, email service, and social media profiles. These are some of the companies I use. Again, they're not doing anything wrong. It's just that I know they work with this stuff methodology. So prepaid services, Namecheap, great all-in-one service. It gives you DNS, VPN, hosting, email, SSL. They have their own SSL. It takes a little manipulation to get Let's Encrypt to work, but it is possible to get Let's Encrypt to work. Just takes a little configuration. There are others. As I said, GoDaddy, Blue Hosting, lots and lots of ones. Again, if you're looking for the credit-based model providers, they just always seem to work. And again, PayPal can be used to hide monthly service fees from these prepaid debit cards. All right. Okay, we're looking to create businesses. Well, what's better than using G Suite Business Services or Office 365? Both to create the company or run their campaigns. Both of these services can be bought directly or as part of the VPS domain name providing offer. G Suite, it can set up the domain company for you, or as I said, it can be used as part of the VPS provider. The only thing that's required is a prepaid debit card, the ability to modify a DNS record if you're not buying it directly from Google, or if you're buying directly from Google, then all you need is an anonymous email account besides the prepaid debit card. Of course, you get that with your burner Android phone. Office 365, I find it works brilliantly by using PayPal. So this does require a burner phone. Office 365 is one of the email vendors that do require you to have a mobile phone because, well, you can't get, a mobile phone anonymously. Let's see, it can be set up as a domain name. You'll see that throughout this talk is fredfishmonger.com. That's just a test domain I use to create it. It's actually not linked to any of my active campaigns or long-term companies. But you can go ahead and take a look at that domain. Their services are out there and stuff of that nature. See if you can trace it back to myself. I'd be very interested if you can. All right, let's see. Again, other services you can get, VoIP services. Again, this is just another one of my burner accounts, this Yannick. Again, it just needs a mobile phone. It's it's just a balanced model. There are certain providers that you can use with certain configurations to modify spoofing. Some of them do require hardware to be hosted in your infrastructure. But what does that do with your voice campaigns when you're spoofing a company's number or a client's number? And again, paid for with these prepaid debit cards with anonymous accounts. You'll notice that it says auto recharging is disabled. Again, you want to make sure that you avoid the subscriptions on prepaid debit cards. It's one way to get the transactions rejected. All right. What else can you do? How about an Apple developer account? Yep. All right. So what you need is an Apple ID, 2FA. Both of those are gained by the smartphone. It's $107 for a personal developer account, so get a card for about $110. Match the addresses between the developer account and the business services. I find that using G Suite or Office 365 as the email provider will slide right on through Apple's authentication or identification. You need to keep the burner phone around for the term of the engagement because you will need to keep putting in the token for the two-factor. The text message-based VoIP persist do work. Before you think you're going to load up malicious code to Apple's store, it won't work. They're very, very good at filtering out malicious code. But you can actually send a developer-signed app code to a target, bypassing the App Store, the Apple Store. Apple can fix this by actually mailing you a code. I go over some things you can't do, but if Apple actually mailed a code to that fake address, that address that you provided, this would blow it out the window because of the fact that unless you're being really unethical or paid somebody else to get someone in trouble. Okay, so really quickly, I'm running out of time, so I want to go through tracing what is required to create the social media accounts. So LinkedIn, email address, or Facebook, because, you know, Facebook's one of the gatekeepers of identity. One of the things you can do with LinkedIn, you can actually use a prepaid debit card for a trial of the recruiter account. So if you have a target, you can go ahead, create this anonymous and traceable email address, sign into LinkedIn, use a prepaid debit card when you're offered the trial, just cancel it in 30 days, and you can just go through as a recruiter, pulling out company contacts. Gmail, it requires a mobile number. A lot of email providers now require mobile numbers or email address. Actually, one thing I did notice in Gmail, if you're logged in with a Gmail account, you can go ahead and create other Gmail accounts. It's no problem at all. Beautiful. Twitter, just email. PayPal. Email address, mobile number. They will keep sending you multiple text messages if you do not validate your account, which you can't because you don't want to, but the prepaid debit cards work brilliantly on these services. Facebook, because, well, that's one of the gatekeepers. Mobile number or a company domain name. If you're using like a Gmail account or a third-party company, Facebook does require a picture identification proof, but just use a mobile app and you're good to go to create the Facebook accounts. Every once in a while, Facebook will ask to send a code to the phone number, but I just click, I don't have that number anymore to bypass the check, and they never seem to ask me to change the phone number on the account. So you can keep it around forever. Okay, what about no? Well, things you can't get. You can't get a code signing cert. You can't get a business or thing. It requires identification. And as I said, you cannot get a Google business on Google Maps. They require a code to be mailed to you. So unless you've done some manipulation with a business, you can't get that code. So don't try. Okay, I'm done. All right. So here's my contact. I did very quickly ramble at you. As I said, this was a 25-minute cliff notes of the 45-minute talk. If anyone has any questions or anything, please contact me or talk to me at the con. I will gladly fill in, especially if it has to do with the extra steps you have to do to protect people that are people of abuse. Well, that is my time before you cut me off. Thank you. Wow, that's nerve-wracking.